Well, good morning, everyone, as you begin to join. My name is Ian McKechnie. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships at the Advanced Services Group, and we'll be starting just at 11 o'clock with this next webinar and the Servitization live series called Improving Manufacturing Productivity. Well, good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the next webinar we have in our Servitization live series entitled Servitization, Improving Manufacturing Productivity. My name is Ian McKechnie. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships at the Advanced Services Group at Aston Business School. I'll be the host today and joined by a group of specialists to talk about a report that was undertaken earlier this year, and to talk about the support and the other activities that sit around that programme itself. So let me just take you through the structure for today. First of all, we have the introductions, and then we'll have Mark Funnell talking about insights coming from the report and his team's experience. We'll then have Dr. Kawal Kapoor talking about the report and the research that surrounds it. We'll also have Lorraine During and Dr. David Pugh from the Digital Catapult talking about the insights in the report. And then towards the end, we'll have about 10 minutes to deal with any questions that you may have as delegates to the event. And I'll then finally close with some remarks at the end, signposting other activities or where you can find support. Please, when you're going through the webinar, if there are any questions that you have for any of the panelists, please drop it into the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we will moderate and navigate our way through these questions, and we will filter them depending on who's best to respond to that particular question. So I'm delighted today that we have Mark Funnell with us. Mark is a Director of DETI. He'll tell you more about DETI as the webinar progresses, but he's based at the National Composite Centre in Bristol. We've also got Kawal Kapoor, who's the Partnership Research Manager at the Advanced Services Group, and delighted that we've got Lorraine During and Dr. David Pugh from the Digital Catapult. Lorraine was instrumental in leading us and navigating us through the report that was undertaken earlier in the year, and David is Head of Sustainability. So, the Advanced Services Group, who are we? We're led by Professor Tim Baines. He's one of the leading scholars on servitization, really the term servitization about adding services to support the product in use. He is a highly cited author, perhaps the highest in the world for servitization and advanced services, and the author of the book Made to Serve, which is a key reference book in the transformation journey that firms go on. We are a centre of excellence based at Aston Business School. We focus exclusively on this term servitization and advanced services, and we support firms by educating, by training, by sharing research, and by supporting a global network of like-minded firms. The Advanced Services Group is a separate entity, and that's really where the intellectual property resides, and where Kawal will take you through her role in the research later on in the webinar. So some of the businesses that we'll work with, you'll see them there, some large, well-known firms, some very small firms. I think the smallest has got 11 employees, but they all have one thing in common. They want to secure growth. They want to create more value in what they do. They want to share that value with customers, and they want customers to become more successful. So we've got at Aston, just over 10 years of experience of supporting about 450 businesses as they migrate from a product-centric world to a services-centric world, where they're providing services to support the asset in use. But there's a big elephant in the room, and it's very simply the fact that many people don't know what is meant by the term servitization, so we can help with that. Once people understand what it is, they don't necessarily know where to start within their own organisation to start that transformation journey. And again, we can help with that. They're not sure whether they can make more money from servitizing. Well, our cases suggest that they can and do. And again, that's something that we share with firms that are new to servitization. Will the customer become more successful? In the main, yes. There are some caveats, but we understand what these are. But in the main, customers become much more successful because they're accessing the capability they need rather than the asset they need. And we get challenged sometimes on about the mindset change, and I respond by saying I spend probably 90% of my time turning management heads 180 degrees away from thinking about the product to thinking about the customer. And how do I access support? Well, one of the reasons why the webinar exists today and why we're coming together to share some of that insight. So very simply, one of our models that we use represents the business model in a very simplistic way. It shows the four elements from top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right, really looking at the value proposition that the customer is being offered, how you deliver that value to the customer, how you're paid for the value that's captured in that process, and the competitive advantage that then gives you. And we help firms navigate what we call a transformation roadmap. This is based upon experience of global firms actually moving from the left-hand side, where they first start to hear about servitization, all the way through to the right-hand side, where they're actually successfully exploiting new services with their customers. And for every manufacturer and every technology innovator that we encounter, they can all place themselves on this services staircase. And our role at the Advanced Services Group is to understand the research that sits behind it, to share that research, and to help firms move up this staircase as far and as high as they're able to, or the company requires them to. So just a little bit of background about the kind of the services and the support that we offer. This is the report that we created in conjunction with the Digital Catapult and with Mark and his team at NCC. And it's available as the webinar is recorded. You will get a link to the recording afterwards, and all the links to the report are there and available. So it's my pleasure now to introduce you to Mark Funnell from the National Competence Centre. And Mark is going to talk to you about the role of DETI, what DETI stands for, and how we have worked with Mark in this research report. So over to you, Mark.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ian. So to be here and to talk to you guys about advanced services or servitization. Hi everyone, my name is Mark Funnell. I'm the director of the DETI, the Digital Engineering Technology and Innovation Program run out of the west of England. I'm also the head of digital technologies at the National Competence Centre. What is the National Competence Centre? Well, we are one of 7 centres related to high-value manufacturing. We are part of the Catapult network. We have a facility that is 21,500 meters squared. It is a factory. It is a facility which contains the world's leading composite manufacturing technologies. And across the HVMC, we have something like £800 million worth of assets related to engineering and manufacturing technologies, where manufacturing businesses can come and work with us to essentially understand how to pull technology through and how to essentially get value before they introduce it into their own markets. So we operate between that value of death of tier level 3s, if you're familiar with the technology readiness levels, but technologies that are coming onto the market that need to be tested inside a relevant environment. We offer that environment, and it's sponsored by the government to support and enable businesses to essentially accelerate through to something that can get out into the real world and start to make money and start to produce value for the industries. Within the DETI, what we talked to the West of England Combined Authority about, it is led by the West of England, and it is a program made up of 6 organizations. We have 3 research and technology organizations. That's ourselves, representing the High Value Manufacturing Catapult, the Digital Catapult, which we'll meet later on the call today, the Center for Modeling and Simulation, who provide a lot of engineering, IT, and software environments for us to play in, and then the 3 leading universities within the West of England, the University of Bristol, Bath, and the West of England themselves. And together, that consortium has created a group of capabilities that together one of us wouldn't have been able to do ourselves. And we represent and drive innovation on behalf of industry. What we've tried to create within the DETI over the last couple of years, and we're coming to the end of our phase 1 program, is access to what we call our test beds. And I'll deal with test beds and come into them in a bit more detail later. We also have trying to derive return on investment and accelerate adoption of these technologies by providing industrial scale demonstrators. So you can actually walk into our facilities and you can get your hands on and see digital in action, how it actually works within a real environment that looks and feels very much like a big factory that you would see within the organizations that Ian was alluding to earlier. We also provide a comprehensive skills program, which is led by the University of West of England, to drive the next generation of engineers of the future, essentially. We work closely with STEM and schools to be able to work the younger generation and bring them up to speed on digital. And we also provide apprenticeship schemes and start to look at the curriculums that would be required for masters and PhD students, as well as hands-on training and learning factories, as we call them, for individuals who want to upskill themselves in industry. So that, in a nutshell, is the DETI, a consortium of individuals trying to transform their engineering for the future and really inspiring the next generation of digital engineers. What I want to talk a little bit about in these slides is the journey of transformation. We start off with 2 propositions where we work with SMEs and others and understand the problem statements that they have. And ultimately, we've gotten down onto 2 things. One is this concept of failure to launch. What does that mean? Is people don't quite understand what digital means. And we allude to the fact that they don't quite understand what this term servitization means, which is the work that ASG is doing with us. But actually, people don't really understand what digital technologies are and how they could actually be used for themselves. We also talk about this concept of failure to land, which means people have done some prototyping, done some proof of concepts, but none of these activities are reflected or even landing effectively inside their own organizations. And what the DETI is trying to do with its test beds and its consortium is to help people on understanding and diagnosing this particular journey. So here's an example of our framework that we use. It also starts and always starts with experience. We're not here to push technology. We're here to understand where the value proposition is for your businesses, and we offer diagnostic services to essentially look at the variability, look at the understanding of manufacturing and other technologies or other opportunities in the operations space. And from that, we then map out where the most feasible first step is within your digital journey. One of the key aspects of the digital journey is the data acquisition. Digital is all about the data, and an ability to move to the servitization or advanced services aspects requires you to really understand how you would go about accessing and providing and getting access to data of the products and services or the products that you would have out on the market. And with that data, essentially, you need all the IoT and IT background and information. And again, the DETI has provided some papers and some work in that area, which can help you on that journey and demystify and the understanding of how you go about doing that. And finally, in the top right, well, that's great. We have all this data, but what the heck is meant by AI, machine learning, and all these kinds of tools that potentially offer you the opportunities for success? How do we drive towards predictive maintenance? How do we work towards assessing and providing services to our business, to our customers in the future? And how do we build a team that is capable to maintain and sustain and continually work effectively with us on that nature? Now, whether that's a joint venture with a digital company or whether that's building your own team, that's the kind of journey that we would like to go down with you. Okay. So just to talk a little bit about DETI testbeds, and the reason I want to bring this up is these testbeds are available now. We've created them as part of our phase 1 program. And what they offer you is an opportunity to come and get hands-on experience with what digital looks like in an engineering or manufacturing environment, as well as within an IT setting. It is pretty much secure and set up to be able to help you to work with us, to collaborate with us, and to learn with us. And it is set up for 2 different types of customers. One is the end user, the manufacturer or the product manufacturer, who is interested in exploring what digital can do for them, all the way up from just simply providing their own ability to visualize information of what's happening in their shop floor, all the way to advanced services and the capabilities that you would maybe want to put out in the servitization space, which we'll come into later. It also is there for technology providers. Apologies, it also is there for technology providers to really showcase and trial and develop their tech inside a real setting. So moving from alpha to beta and into real commercialization phases. And the reason why I bring up the test beds is coming soon, we're going to be launching and putting a proposal in for DETI phase 2. And it is going to be focusing attention on what we call the transformation services or the advanced services centers that we want to establish within the West of England to support you on your journey. And it is all about colliding the manufacturing and the digital communities together to essentially make sure that you guys get most value from how you would utilize digital technologies. It is an honest and individual, an honest and independent learning aspect. And you learn not just from us, but you also learn from peers who have exploited and experienced the advanced servitization journey. And it is really an open environment where you can experience what good looks like and how you would want to get there. And this is where the DETI testbeds could offer you an absolute platform and will be utilized as part of the advanced services centers that we're looking to establish within the West of England. And it is a combined effort between ourselves, the Digital Catapult, Aston on the call, and the Set Squared, which is all about, which is a world-leading accelerator program based out in the West of England. So we're trying to position these communities together in a collaborative way to offer you the best services to get productivity and to increase your market value. I won't harbor too much on the slide, but I just wanted to give you oversights into what is available currently. So you appreciate the test beds that could be provided, manufacturing of composites, augmented working, in-factory technology solutions, predictive operations, etc. And we have a publication of all our digital operations and our case studies within our website. So please do go and have a look at it. And thank you for your time. I'll pass over to Cavill to take you through the advanced servitization journey.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks. Thanks, Ian. Hi, everyone. My name is Cavill Kapoor, and I'm the Partnership Research Manager for the Advanced Services Group. So let me start from the start then. So just a little bit about what servitization is. It's simple. When a firm speaks of servitization, they're telling you that they're now offering services in addition to the products they are manufacturing. Services that complement their products. So think of servitization as an innovation of a firm's capabilities, their processes, so they can now sell a bundled product service offering to their customers. And servitization is not a new process. Think about it. Manufacturers have used one or the other forms of it. If a manufacturer is providing warranties and spare parts, they're essentially offering base level services. So, at the ground level, these are what we call base services. You move up and we are looking at services that are offered to the customers to make their repair and maintenance easy for them. And these are intermediate services. And then we have the advanced services. So sitting right at the top, they're representing servitization in its full might. And these are complex, more sophisticated services and the ones that we are most interested in. So advanced services are focusing on outcomes. So they're about how does the product perform? What does the use of a product enable or allow a customer to do? So we moved away from the idea of selling a product to the consequences of its performance. What will the customer gain by using that product? So this is where most value sits for both the firm that is offering these services and for their customers. And because the firm wants to offer servitized offerings, they're innovating more. They're investing more in product innovation. They're listening very carefully to their customers to understand which services will most fit their customers' needs, because those are the services the customers are willing to pay for. So they're better responding to their customers' needs. This increases customer loyalty, it builds new revenue streams for the business. And because these new revenue streams are sitting there with this high-end product innovation happening within the firm, they're setting higher barriers to competition, and this is improving the firm's standing in the market. So that's about services and servitization. Wrong slide advance. Right. Now, Ian already introduced you to the Advanced Services Group and briefed you about what we do. I'll add a little more detail to it. I'll talk about our IP, its richness, to show you what we do to help servitizing firms across the globe. So research expertise is our strength, and also our extensive experience of working with global manufacturing firms. And these firms are working their way through service transformation. We understand their problems. We develop tools and frameworks to support them. And these are what you're seeing on your screen right now. So whether it's our global partnership or the SMEs, we have the resources that can basically take firms, take SMEs, for example, through a step-by-step process where from zero awareness of servitization, they can go on to formulate a solid value proposition for their customers. And this can be supported with a plan for the skills they need, the technology and digital elements they need to be looking at, the financial aspects they need to be aware of, so on and so forth, to help them understand what their current competitive strategy is and what it should be in the future in relation to services. So for instance, we have a services vision template to start with. This helps firms create a vision around servitization, and they use this to communicate, to debate, to influence decisions about servitization amongst key stakeholders. We have a customer segmentation tool. It helps firms identify customers' appetite for services by segment and then come up with a plan specific to that segment. We have financing and contracting guides. It's got a checklist to help firms see how much detail a service contract should go into. A value network tool, which is giving a detailed account of a firm's relationship, the variety of stakeholders. How does a firm interact with distributors or technology vendors or even competitors? And how do these relationships then change with services in picture? We have a guide on engineering design for service. We co-created this with Rolls-Royce. So there's a lot of co-creation happening at the level at which we partner with different firms. We have something for creating a services-led business model blueprint, for force field analysis, for creating compelling stories. I can go on, because there is a long list of resources in our armory to help businesses, help SMEs take these steps necessary to make that switch from a product-led strategy to a services-led strategy. And you'll find more information about this in the report itself. So, we have an established framework for helping manufacturing SMEs benefit from servitization-focused business models. The framework was developed, tried and tested with around 400 SMEs in the West Midlands, and it's been used since 2012. The framework was to suit SMEs that were supported under the ERDF program. That was the European Regional Development Fund. So when we work with SMEs, when we're working with them, we begin with an assessment exercise. We use a tool called the Unlock Your Insight tool created by ASG. So we use this as a starting point to help SMEs understand what their dominant competitive business strategy is. We help them by talking them through the results of the assessment results of the Unlock Your Insight tool, which is the strategy analysis part. This feeds into understanding the roadmap that they need to embark on for their service transformation. The roadmap helps them understand the journey, and then we can help them by identifying the position or the points where ASG can support their journey, whether it's in the service exploration phase or whether when it comes to service engagement, we can identify the points of support. There's a dedicated session to understand the pains and gains, which is sometimes combined with the customer value proposition session. We then use a storytelling tool. We determine how we can shape a story around the value proposition that they've created, so they can get the buy-in from the board, from the higher management, from the customers to engage with this service proposition. When we get to the pilot stage, we're looking at various tools like the value network analysis tool to help SMEs see the barriers, the opportunities with stakeholder relationships in mind. And all of these are captured in case studies when it comes to impact. They feed into several research projects. And this is how we build long-term relationships with SMEs. We've worked with some of the SMEs over several years, like Coolmill, for example. We jumped in to support their services journey, and they were involved in a research project, and we've now worked with them 7 years. So the ERDF program that I just mentioned, there were 400 SMEs involved, and ASG intensively supported 157 of them. And between 2012 and 2018, so 6-year period, in terms of economic impact, these SMEs generated about £32.25 million in gross value added through servitization. And these figures have changed since the writing up of this report, because some of the program evaluation results were not available back then. But we have these figures now. And if we go back to 2012 and come up to the end of 2021, ASG supported about 450 SMEs. 300 of them have been intensively supported. And looking at the figures, they've generated around £50 million in gross value added through servitization. In terms of capturing the servitization impact across SMEs, we put together case studies. We have a book called Servitization Applied, which is again a compilation of 30-odd case studies of manufacturing SMEs in the West Midlands. They successfully completed a transfer servitization program, which was led by ASG around business engagement. And these 30 firms are of so these 30 case studies are of firms. Those were most able to show how they engaged with service transformation and how they delivered service offerings to their customers. And cumulatively, they generated £10 million in revenues through services. And when we look at the overall figure for all of the 80 firms that were involved in the transfer program, the figure goes up to £22.85 million in revenues from services. And I think at this point, it'll be really insightful for you to hear from Ian about one of these companies, Alpha Tribe, how ASG played a part in supporting their servitization goals and the impact they generated through services. Ian, will you please share with us what Alpha Tribe did with their service initiative, please?
Yeah, of course, Carol. And firstly, thank you for teeing that up for me. That was really helpful. This is a small company that we encountered in the West Midlands region of the UK. Traditionally, they recycled and refurbished shredding machines. So you might have a big shredder, industrial size shredder, where it recycled steel or aluminium or brass, plastic, whatever the medium was. And they had a very strong manufacturing and design heritage, but a struggling marketplace. So we worked with them for about 18 months. You'll see to the top right-hand side of the screen, you'll see the business model template that we created with them. So in the top left-hand side was all about the customer value proposition. The top right was how they would deliver that value. The bottom left was how they would be paid for that. And the bottom right was the competitive advantage. Now, traditionally, as they were in the marketplace, it was all about them reclaiming old machines and recycling them. They would then reuse these machines. But that capability was not sufficient for them in terms of any new services. So one of the things they looked at was creating a new service for new customers. And you'll see the left-hand side there, there's a small blue bin, metal bin. They developed a case for a weapons surrender management system. So that blue bin utilized their design credibility, their manufacturing credibility, and they worked with the local police and crime commissioner in the West Midlands and they identified suitable sites that they could then install these weapon bins for the relevant authorities. And what this really did was it showed how they were pivoting to a different market with different customers, but utilizing the skills, the engineering heritage that they had. But the business model, by completing the template that we supported them with, they were able to identify new opportunities in the market where they could significantly increase their revenues. And if I could get you to go to the next screen, please, Carol, I think it's quite important to show that this is just an example of what they were getting from bins they put across the West Midlands in a 6-month period. There were just over 1,300 weapons taken from society. Guns, machetes, knives. But what they did was they took these weapons, they then catalogued them, they photographed them, they reported back to the Police and Crime Commissioner on what they had secured, and then they recycled the materials back into raw material again. So it was really closing the loop. And if you think of perhaps some of anecdotal figures that are around that any one loss of life may result in £1 million charge against government or the NHS, what you can see before you is a significant saving to both life and the economics of the region. So a fantastic example of a very small company using the business model framework to think about how they could offer new services to the market, whether that was existing services to existing customers or to offering new services to new customers. A fantastic way to go through it. And I think at that point, Carol, I can hand back to you unless you've got any other questions on the example.
Thank you, Ian. That was great. That was perfect. Right, then a little bit on the report now. In the main, this report is exploring the role of servitization in UK manufacturing. So the impact servitization has on manufacturing productivity and how it affects the UK economy. So you'll find that the report discusses some inhibitors, some enablers of servitization, and specifically it explores the appetite for servitization in the southwest of England and south of Wales, a region that is rich in manufacturing subsectors. So transport, aerospace, defense, these could stand to benefit from servitization. And some of the latest figures that we've looked at show that the service sector in the UK accounts for 80% of the total gross value added, and the number of UK manufacturing firms moving towards services is on an all-time high. So you look at industry reports, and more reports are estimating higher revenues, some in the range of £13.3 billion by 2025, saying UK manufacturers will be, looking at that sort of revenue focused on service business models. So undoubtedly, there is growing appetite for services in the UK. However, the findings of our report suggest that the uptake in the southwest of England and south of Wales is not as widespread as it could be. And this is very likely because manufacturers still don't understand fully the benefits that servitization has to offer. So such lack of awareness, combined with lack of skills as well needed for the delivery of services, are or might be acting as obstacles to the adoption of servitization in this region. But as I've shared in my previous slides, the West Midlands paints a different picture. It is a region with similar levels of employers, and in 2021, it had similar levels of manufacturing output and investment as the Southwest. So if West Midlands have benefited from servitization, they've been successful, it makes a case for the potential of servitization in the Southwest. Firms in the Southwest need to look at what's gone down in other regions, the success factors, take inspiration from them to be open to the benefits that servitization can bring. And that's pretty much all from me. I'm now going to invite Lorraine and David to tell us more about the report.
Thank you, Carol.
Great, thanks, Carol. So yes, I'm just going to talk a bit about some of the findings that we have established in the report. We did the research a couple of months ago through primary research as well as analysis of existing work. So as has already been established by Cowell and other panelists, servitization is becoming more popular in UK manufacturing. However, despite this increasing interest towards the incorporation of servitization, uptake in the UK is not as widespread as it could be. And part of the reason for this is related to skills and servitization, with actually a survey in 2018 identifying skill shortages as one of the biggest problems for 50% of servitized SMEs in the EU. And this lack of skills was also noted by industry experts to be present as a major barrier to servitization in the UK manufacturing sector. So during the course of research for this report, both primary research and analysis of existing research, the following skills gaps were identified. Lack of digital skills. And here we see that servitized business models are usually combined with digital technologies to enable things like connectivity, predictive maintenance, and remote monitoring of products. However, this means that the incorporation of servitization also requires a higher level of digital analysis in order to coordinate activities with customer needs. One other shortage identified was the lack of data management and analytical skills. Here we see that remote monitoring related to servitization collects crucial product data, which needs to be analyzed. So it can be used to design and deliver services specific to customer needs. The lack of these skills risks the firm's ability to effectively utilize product performance data, and as such, its ability to monetize through services. And another skill shortage that was identified is the lack of interpersonal or soft skills related to customer management. Manufacturing as a service involves more interaction and deeper relationships with customers. And as such, it's seen here that interpersonal skills are therefore crucial across customer-facing roles for relationship building. And in relation to the potential application of servitization in the southwest of England and Wales. As has been noted before, the region has a strong and established manufacturing presence, with the aerospace and defence manufacturing subsectors, as well as transport and other ones, accounting for a large proportion of industry, as well as a growing appetite for digital skills in the region. However, current uptake in the region is low, as many manufacturers are in the early stages of understanding the benefits. And so, as was previously noted, in determining the ways in which servitization could benefit the southwest of England and Wales, it's useful to look at it in comparison to the West Midlands, which is a region with similar levels of employment, of manufacturing output, of investment and business confidence. With successful use cases having been successfully carried out in the West Midlands, it's indicative of the potential of servitization for manufacturers in the Southwest. And again, more can be found in the reports. So what incentives could accelerate the adoption of servitization? Based on the challenges raised by major manufacturing companies in adopting advanced service business models, several incentives were identified for what industry believes could accelerate this adoption of servitization in the UK. There were quite a few incentives listed, but just a few of them include financial and accounting institutions to assist, in particular, original equipment manufacturers with financing and contracting for servitization. Investment in collaborations that involve manufacturers, government, business, universities, and any other support services to help manufacturers with innovative service business models. And mechanisms that offer advice for both SMEs and large manufacturers about innovation, regulations, exports, and any other relevant information in order to create a wider knowledge base and help to bridge the skills gap. And now I'll pass on to my colleague David, who will speak about some of the digital aspects related to servitization.
Thanks, Lorraine. So we talked a lot about the business models, and what I want to talk about really is what makes a product servitizable, and connected assets are a really key part of that. And so by connecting up our assets so that when they're in the field, it's important to understand some really basic data. So when are these assets on, when are they off? What's their operational efficiency? How long do they spend idle? What are their short and long-term performances? And equally, where are they? Especially if you've got smaller assets that move around or move between factories. And all this data is obviously useful from a contracting perspective, understanding what does the business model look like, but equally it's important for ensuring the lifetime of product by intervening with predictive and preventative maintenance. Early means that those assets will be in the field longer, and we're reducing industrial waste by understanding how customers are using the services and using the equipment that they have. We're able to adjust the services to customer needs and really understand the requirements really well, so that it's not just a product that are being provided and then being used as a service, but also making sure that there are great services that are available to our customers and refining those over a period of time. We don't need to set a service at the beginning, but having that ongoing understanding of how assets are being used, how the services are being used, and even things like the happiness metrics of our customers. And so to actually connect up your devices and connect up your assets, there's a few things that need to happen. So I'll jump to the next slide. You can see here, this is some work that Digital Catapult and the Advanced Services Group have been working on together, looking at how do we connect up an asset. And you can see here we've got an air compressor, which on its own, as it stands, as you buy it from a company, it's not a connected asset. It does its job very well, but there's no way to get that information out into the world. So we found that using off-the-shelf sensors, off-the-shelf equipment, it's very quickly this product can become connected. And so by retrofitting temperature sensors, pressure sensors, current clamps, the vibration sensors, we're able to understand when the compressor's on and what it's doing. Now, connecting that up so that when you have assets in the field, they can be providing this data back around the services that are undergoing and how the assets are used is incredibly valuable as well. And that comes with gateways and the wireless connectivity. Now, this could be Wi-Fi, it could be LoRaWAN, which is a more industrial focus piece, but these two pieces are very hardware focused. So this is what would go into a factory with the server as part of the service. And then the second piece here is all around data management. I've already said there's a big skills gap for industry at the moment. So being able to process information, send it up to the cloud and manage it well, and then put that data and information and convert it into business applications, mobile applications, and customer applications is really valuable. And so these are the areas where each of these 4 areas are areas the DETI program at large can help with. The test beds that Mark spoke about are all around helping industry to utilize some of these areas and to help them test out ideas and get those pieces moving further forward. And so some of the key decisions to make are, as a company that's looking at servitization in terms of connecting your assets, it's in this piece here on the right hand side. So looking at what are the sensors that you require, and also what's the data that you require to provide a good service. Understanding what the wireless technologies are, and therefore what gateways need to go with any assets into a factory. Understanding where that data should go, and that's in terms of cloud platform and data storage, and then looking at the application services. So how does that data become really valuable information, and how does that information then inform customers as well as the service provider? And alongside all of that, there's a few things that are obviously very important. Security, for example, was and always will be a key factor to manage in servitized business models, because you're putting things out into the world that are connected. Now, there is a risk there, but it's always a manageable risk. But making sure that that's at the forefront of what you're doing is really valuable. Understanding the connectivity, and this might vary between different factories based on wireless coverage, based on cellular coverage, and the location of the sites. Messaging protocols as well, understanding how you're looking to send data. But as I said, this is These are areas that the DETI testbeds are designed to help and support industry in making the right decisions and figuring out the right ideas, so that within a year, industry can be having the assets it needs to be able to provide a servitized model. And with that, I'll hand back to Ian.
Thank you very much for that, Lorraine and David. Thank you. We have got some questions starting to pop into the Q&A function below. If any other questions have arisen from either Mark or Carol or Lorraine and David's session, please put them through and we'll deal with them. But one of the questions that sits in the chat the Q&A function at the moment is about this issue of data being a major barrier from a customer perspective, i.e. data security and the sharing that the customer is perhaps not willing to undertake. So Mark, if I can come to you first, have you identified ways of dealing with that issue of customer data access and the security? And if so, could you perhaps give us an example or how you might even provide support at the moment?
Yeah, thanks, Ian. It's a bit of a difficult question. Appreciate its opening gambit for the Q&A. Nice one. I don't think that's a relatively black and white answer. We have established across the HVMC an entire activity around what we call the enterprise architecture, looking at a few things around interoperability as it relates to data, looking at standardization of data formats, looking at what we call resilience in data. And that means a number of things around how regular do you need that data to be available to you? What quality metrics do you need to assign to that data set? And then the security of where that data is actually residing, first of all, how you then access it off whatever asset it is, whether it's in the field or inside the factory, and all the protocols around maintaining it, not necessarily the security, but the IP associated data. As we move down this data-driven world, the IP and the knowledge that you build off the back of that data becomes more critical than probably the data itself, to be honest. And we have papers that we've written on what we call zero trust networking. Okay, so if you've heard this term, the opportunity to move from basically a position where everything is outside your factory and you have a firewall at the edge of your network, which is sort of at your product or at your factory boundary, and how you then push security protocols into your IoT devices or your sensors that you would need to have on your systems, right down into the nuts and bolts of the devices you attach. So moving security from a networking perspective right down to a devices perspective. And there's an entire security journey that needs to go down on that. You know, we've explored with the National Cybersecurity Office and others some technologies for cybersecurity, including things like quantum key distribution, we take maybe for the future of quantum type stuff. But, you know, we don't have any answers to that. We do have a test bed, in fact, on cybersecurity for data acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
So if people are interested in that, you can come and have a chat with us. And it is in factory, but there's some very relevance and overlapping, because security of data is as relevant as it is in the factory as it will be out in the field. So I can't give you a firm, we have the answer and solution to that. I think it's a bit of a case-by-case basis, but we are working with all the vendors and security officers in that space and can provide you some very valuable insights. So please do come and have a chat. I think is the best way I can answer that one.
Okay, thanks, Mark. That's really helpful. Carol, have you got anything to add from your experience of working with the firms?
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, I mean, this is the most obvious question staring at our faces. There is no short answer to it. This is a very big problem. How do you find? I think you take a couple of steps back. It's about, well, you're a firm that's interested in servitization or venturing into servitized offerings, but then it is about finding the right or targeting the right customers. That is where tools like customer segmentation come into play, which can help you identify the right people who have the appetite for this. And because they have the appetite, they will be willing to share that data with you to take the initiative forward, to get into the piloting phase, to see what you can do for them and how much of the data that they are offering you can be translated into services that can, take their business engagements forward to serve their end customers. So that's as far as my experience of it goes, Ian.
Okay, thank you, Carol. And perhaps, David, if I can come to you from a digital catapult perspective, how have you been able to overcome this situation where the barrier seems to be about the security of the data?
Everyone's very keen to protect their data these days. And it kind of goes back to, if you went to a tech show in kind of 2016, every keynote speaker would say, data is the new oil, it's the future. And what that's led to is people going, oh, data's new oil, I better store all mine and not share it with anyone because it has clear value. And we've not really got there, partly because everyone keeps storing their data. And we've got a bit of a plastic problem now for data where it's single use and only one auditor can use it, so you never really get the value. And so what we've done is we've worked with lots of major infrastructure programs that have looked at this and said, well, actually, we've got data. We are comfortable with other people having it if they've got it for the right reasons and they're going to use it in the right way. So shared infrastructure is really key here. And having ways for companies to view and use the data without actually extracting or running away with stacks of data is really key. Having a data engineer in the room with lawyers, with business people that are making these decisions, because often these decisions are made by people that don't have an understanding of data or how it's useful, and as a result, it's always like, this is our data, we can't see it. Having some data engineers in the room supporting those decisions and supporting the understanding of what data can we share, what data should we not share, and what are the risks that come with sharing data with relevant companies in there is really key. And so those are the two things. Start looking at have a look at shared infrastructure where you can use data, understand it, but not necessarily walk away with it, and have those data engineers as part of the conversation on what data should and shouldn't be shared.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, David. I think
and just to add
yes,
something,
Mark?
I think it it's interesting on the security question. We did an assessment in the DETI on security between the cloud and on-premise and all these other bits and pieces. And I think people are still a bit scared about data because data is a relatively new currency, in brackets.
Yeah.
And in fact, we've got that piece of research is, don't be worried about the cloud, people. The cloud is actually more secure. You do financial transactions and everything with your critical core data today. And your data sets are protected in those sort of public cloud scenarios. In fact, more so in some cases than on-premise devices. So, there is opportunities and avenues there. And we've done a quite exhaustive study on security protocols and needs for data and how you would get those data clouds working for you in the right way. Okay. Okay,
thanks, Mark. I think my additional, input for this is that the whole journey towards servitized advanced services involves the relationship and intimacy with your customer. And I think it's about understanding that this is a kind of co-creation process. And that if you recall the services staircase that I showed briefly at the start of this webinar, part of the activity about halfway up is something called performance advisory services. And these are services that you as a manufacturer or technology innovator can provide to your customer based on the data that you get back from the asset in use. So it's about being very clear with your customer that there's a win-win here if they unlock some of that value. And I think it has to be small steps and small piloting. We undertook a project with Digital Catapult and Banksy, and we have a digital demonstrator, which I've got some screenshots of that I can share later on. But that, I think the compressor that you showed in your slide deck, David, is the compressor we used with the different open source sensors. And it was there really to show how the data flows worked and what was required to actually make a difference to the business. And it was not about worrying about the security of the data. It was showing that the principles of doing it and the connectivity and how you could then add value by using that in a trusted way. So I think that really helps. I've got a fantastic question next for Matt. And Matt's asking, do you meet barriers with explaining value to senior management? And Matt is experiencing big issues with that about getting support outside of the shop floor level. How can I work on that? And that, Matt, is a problem we identify in the majority of manufacturing firms that we work with. But one of the tools that we created was a storytelling wheel. And what we do is we help firms through the business model blueprint, and then we add a storytelling layer. And that story allows you to either convince your management team or your executive or your board about the value of taking these steps, or indeed about engaging your customer and bringing the customer on that journey with you. So let me perhaps make it open. Mark, Carol, have you got anything to respond to that challenge about explaining value to senior management?
Mark, you want to go first?
I can do, thanks, Carol. I'm smiling because it is a common factor across, I guess, any transformation. We talk about transformation in the three aspects around the people, the process, and the technology ultimately. So in the technology space, as I say, I think there's a lack of understanding about what digital technologies are and how slightly different they are from what we have today, what they had in the 1990s and 1950s type thing. And there's a journey that on one side, we just need to get in my mind, hands-on experience for some of these seniors and actually take the time and the space for them to come and play with these assets. I mean, most people are glorified Excel spreadsheet users at the moment, so trying to introduce them to some of the digital technologies to try and, be less scared of them. But technology is only that one facet. I mean, there's loads of it out there, and just explaining that doesn't really help. It has to come down to putting them in the experience area. So that's why I think the experience centers like the Baxi Boiler, plus the ones we're trying to create in DETI, are really invaluable to walk your CEOs, CTOs, your managers through, and actually be in the room with them, and let the organizations that are not necessarily you pushing, it's other people telling them the stories about what they've been through. I think taking Ian's point, but take them through the business process and take them through the skills that you already have in your team and whatever training would be required for your people, so your bosses or your seniors can actually have an appreciation and a respect for the capabilities that you already have or would need, and the business process change that they would need to install. And if you take it from that angle as well, we always start with the experience. If you get those experiences logged down and you write them out in a business or value chain perspective and explain where digital is going to add additional steps and take away from other steps potentially in that business process, that value chain, I think that's the best approach you can take. But they have to be willing to walk away from their desks and be taken on a journey. And I think that's the biggest challenge. Once they're in the room, I think the values can be explained to them and showcased to them. And we can offer those kind of avenues for honest appraisal of these solutions as independents, really.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Carol, David, anything to add to that?
Just very quickly, so most of the times this is a communications issue. It is an issue of, something that we cannot touch, feel, see. How do you put it out there? How do you explain it to higher management or other stakeholders who cannot comprehend how this will fetch revenues in the future? So big promises with the communication, but I'm very mindful of the time. So we have tools that can help all of these, all of these relationships, all of these value exchanges being mapped and being put in a graphic format that can be, that is visual, that can be easily communicated, and that's how these are building steps to get that buy-in, is what I'm trying to get at. But over to you, Ian.
Okay, thanks, Carol. I'm mindful that there are a number of questions in the Q&A function that we are unlikely to get time to answer all of them. But what we will do is we'll take these questions away and then we'll provide a response to these when we share out the link of the webinar itself. So Andreas and Akent and Nathan, thank you very much for your additional questions. We will come back to you on these ones. What I'd like to do, just to kind of close, is to give you an example of the demonstrator that we talked about with Baxi. This was a project that we were very fortunate to get some Innovate UK funding. We ran a programme for 23 months. We had about £400,000 of government grant, and the rest came from the partners. We had one vision, and that was to understand how could we develop something that demonstrated maybe heat as a service or other X as a service activities. And what we've ended up with is a 45 square metre space in Warwick, where firms can come and look at the static boards and understand the models and frameworks that are appropriate. We have an interactive digital board where we can build new business models and templates. We also have videos, animations, and other tools and techniques on there. But it's a very usable space, and you'll see on the bottom row, the third picture from the left, you'll see in the corner there's the compressor that Digital Catapult had put together, and one of the Digital Catapult team describing the use of the data on there. So please, if there's anything of interest that you want to understand more about the demonstrator or how we're planning to roll these out and support Mark and other catapults in the UK, please come back to us. And lastly from me is really just a big thank you for joining us today. We will send out the link to the recording of the webinar along with the responses to the questions that you posed. And it just leads me to thank all of the speakers today, to Cabo for the insight, to Mark for your expertise on DETI and the NCC, and to Lorraine and David for your help and support all the way through the Servitization report, and obviously for your time and commitment today. So I hope you've all enjoyed it. Again, thank you to Christina, as always, in the background to make sure the Advanced Services Group webinars under our Servitization Live banner are successful, and to you for joining us. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.